And it's my first time getting an auditor onto the podcast, and here we have. Thank you for jumping on, mate. And like I said before the recording started, we've both survived the heat of today. It's just been bloody stupid today, and you said it's going to get bloody worse, which makes it horrendous for me. But I do appreciate you coming on, mate.
That's okay.
Obviously, we're going to keep it a little bit stum with identity and so on, which is obviously what we've got the picture and so on, which is absolutely fine. I'm more than happy with that. That's not a problem at all. Because really what people will want to know and what I want to know are things like how you got into it, you know, the things you've come across and what you're actually seeing and experiencing and why and so on, all that. So for those who are coming out of a cave that they might have been living in the last few years, what is an actual auditor then?
It's a very good question, and and when I'm out filming and people ask me what an auditor, like they ask me if I'm an auditor, I always ask them to try and sort of define it, just to sort of gauge what their perception is. But an auditor for me is just someone that exercises a right to film in public places, particularly public servants and in publicly owned buildings and stuff like that. And it's been allowed to do that unhindered. Is my sort of overarching high definition, I would say. So, but when you ask members of the public that, certainly when you're filming them, when you ask them what an auditor is, they'll say things like, or somebody that just go about trying to get a reaction, someone doesn't have a job or doesn't like is on benefits and all this sort of stuff, and we get associated with right-wing politics quite a lot, and yeah, so again, it's depends who you ask, but for me, it is just somebody that goes about and films in public places and films public services,
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen people who obviously they use drones, and some people who just use the cameras, like body cams and all that. I think I'm relatively new to it. I think I was late to it more so than other people. I kind of got more used to seeing the videos. It was around not long after the Southport incident when people started to then kick off. And then I was noticing that all these kind of auditor channels were coming up. So how did you sort of get into it?
So it was lockdown for a lot of people. I was sat in the same situation where lockdown during COVID happened, and we all found ourselves at home with more spare time than we would like. And I started watching other auditors, essentially. So I was watching people like AB, Marty Blackburrow, News Now Yorkshire, DJ Audits. So I was watching these videos, and I really enjoyed them. And then I started thinking about it, and I kind of thought that I could certainly add to the conversation and have my own sort of unique way of doing it. And so I decided to give it a go one time. It was just from watching it, having a bit of time to kill, and then sort of saying I could do that. And so I started.
What was your first one you did anyway? What did you decide to do?
It was a New Scotland Yard on the banks of the Thames.
Oh wow!
And it's funny when I watched, like, I don't watch my videos generally speaking, but I was on YouTube Studio a while ago, and that sort of came up, my first audit video, and I sort of laugh at sort of how cringe it was, I was definitely at the beginner, and you could hear that I was very, very nervous and stuff like that. But yeah, the first one was New Scotland Yard. I think I'd done it in 2 parts because an inspector tried to throw me down a flight of stairs, and but yeah, I gave it a go. I remember posting it to YouTube, and I still remember sat at my dinner table with my partner watching as the video ticked over 1,000 views, thinking it was just crazy. It was, I never anticipated sort of anything like this to happen, essentially, so it was quite a surprise when people started watching, people started subscribing. I didn't know that you could make money from it. I didn't, before I'd done that video, I didn't even know how to edit a video and stuff like that. So I kind of had to learn as I went. But yeah, it was a bit of an experience, the Scotland Yard one,
Yeah, because I mean, these are where the places that you're going, they are kind of trigger points to places, because I've seen, I mean, I've watched quite a lot of your videos, and you'll go to near police stations. You've done your polling stations as well.
Correct.
And there's always that kind of like, what's he doing? Kind of, and then they'll come out and obviously, what are you doing? You know, if he was outside Debenhams, or they don't play Debenhams, don't even exist anymore. But you know, outside a shop, no one would really be interested. But because you're outside these, like, well, what are you doing hanging around here? Kind of places, you're going to get a reaction, and you do. And quite often, what I see you get is, I don't consent to be filmed.
Correct.
And you will go. You basically go, it's public, mate. It's public. Is it notice that people just don't know the law, the way that is, because it doesn't seem like anyone has quite grasped this, and then they'll throw in GDPR and say, I don't consent by GDPR. Well, it's public.
Yeah. So the GDPR thing, I'll answer that after I answer the first part of your question. Yes, like I come across countless people that appear not to understand that when you're in public, there is no expectation of privacy. There is, in a few very exceptional circumstances, I think the courts would find that a person would have an expectation of privacy, and that would be things like people having like a medical emergency, potentially dying and stuff like that, that you could argue, they should be allowed to be kept private. But generally speaking, people don't have any expectation of privacy in public. And, you know, when people come up and ask me about it, I try my best to mirror how people interact with me. So if people come up and want to ask me genuine questions and are curious, then I'm more than happy to answer them. But if people come up and are going to be sort of hostile to me, then I'm going to alter my approach accordingly. So I do try and accommodate people when they are very unsure and try and answer their questions to the best of my ability. But ultimately, if they're still sort of resistant to it, then unfortunately for them, it is a public place, and I have the right to film anything that I can see. Now, the GDPR element of it is a little bit contentious, because it could be argued that I am a data handler, so therefore I have to comply with certain elements of sort of GDPR. And the way that sort of I would counter that is that ultimately I'm a journalist. Like, I have a degree in journalism, and I believe that the videos that I create is a form of contemporary journalism. You know, the media landscape's changed massively over the last sort of 20 years. And as a journalist, there is a journalistic exemption there that I could fall back on if someone tried to sort of take a case against me for breaching GDPR. So that's sort of what I would say to that. And you could also, like, you get people that will say, well, I'm just doing a hobby, and therefore you don't need to comply with GDPR just because you're filming for pleasure and stuff like that, which technically speaking is correct. But yeah, there's both sort of contentious issues, and I try and sort of accommodate people if and when I can, you know. But if somebody is coming up and not being hostile, then
I'm not being funny, but you know, these people were sort of saying to you, you're only doing this because of clicks, okay?
Correct.
But then they don't help themselves, because they're coming to you to say, don't do this, knowing too well that they're doing the thing you're potentially looking for, which is people coming to you and saying you can't do this. If they'd have just left you alone and just walked off and done what they do, because I imagine you probably have numerous people that you're recording, but you never put them in your clips because they're just walking past and don't say anything.
Exactly, yeah. So you're spot on the money there. That whenever I am out filming, there is countless people that just come and go, mind their own business, and don't really get involved. But unfortunately, again, there is people that want to come up and interact with me, and just by doing that, then usually by default they are going to end up in the video. So it's something that I say to people, that if you just ignored me, you wouldn't have made the final cut. Generally, my videos, I do try and sort of show a bit of the location that I'm filming at, but then I'll also share all the interactions. And it's really sort of ironic. Like, I was at Hendon a couple of weeks ago, and the guy that was in charge of the security kept telling two of the little security guards that were on the gate to just ignore me. Don't talk to him, just ignore me. This is all he wants. But then he himself continued to sort of bite whenever I was sort of throwing out a line. And he continued to keep engaging with me over and over again. It was very funny, but it was also very ironic, you know. And I sort of pointed it out to him, like, why don't you just take your own advice, you know? And the thing that made it even more ironic was that the two guys that he was talking to didn't interact with me at all in the first place before he'd even arrived. So it sort of defeated all purpose, but also it gave me an opportunity to engage with him. And he really sort of drove the second half of that visit. But yeah, it happens a lot, you know. And as I say,
you have also taught me. I mean, it's not teaching me, but I've got a new favourite phrase because of one of your videos when you went to the job centre.
Yeah.
And the slimy weasel that you kept referring.
I think that was a new one. Yeah, that was a new one. But that was because the guy, he was clearly embellishing when he was speaking to the police, and he was clearly lying to members of the public. And
yeah, because just for those who haven't watched it, I mean, I watched it, and so you went into this job centre. He kind of made it very apparent of, well, you're not allowed to record in here, and you said, well, I'm just recording the posters and the information and all that. But then what happened was he phoned the police. I don't really know why, but he phoned the police, and he said that you was recording a woman and a child, and then kept telling people who were coming in that you was recording people with their children.
Correct.
And then, which wasn't true because you explained that all the way through. But then came the slimy weasel phrases, which is now my favourite.
But yeah, that's exactly how it went. And as I was saying to him, like, I don't know why you would lie to people about that, other than you're trying to incite members of the public. Because I'm a parent myself, you know, like, if I always say that if I see someone out in public and they're filming my kids, I probably wouldn't say anything. I would just move my kids on, you know, like if they're outside. Whenever you could film anything in public, there's no age limit on that. Technically, you could film whatever you want. If there's children there, you could film them. Would I say it's the socially correct thing to do? I don't know. I wouldn't do it. But yeah, I would still respect someone's right to do it in public. But if it was my children that were there, I would just move them on. But yeah, I felt he was doing it simply to incite a response from members of the public, because he couldn't get me to do what he wanted me to do. No. And I think if he felt that he was saying things to members of the public, that the embarrassment or the shame or whatever would then force me to sort of do what he wanted me to do, which obviously never happened. It didn't really go his way. So it was just one of them, you know, the slimy weasel thing, like, that was just out of frustration. At the situation, because I consistently told him, just don't lie to people, you know, like, you can tell them I'm filming, fine, you know what I mean, but don't go out your way to sort of lie to people when I've got it all on film anyway. So there's no need for it, but it is what it is, you know. Like,
you did raise a very good point, and it was something that I was thinking about, where you sort of said to the police, well, what happens now then in respect of that they've made a false report?
Yeah.
You know, that you've done something. Is that not culpable for something? I mean, really, this is going to be now onto a big whole issue with, like, you and your dealings with the police, because you've had some interesting ones with the police. Some good, I will admit. Sometimes you've been speaking to some of the officers and they seem fine. They kind of get it, you know, but others not so much. What's been your kind of overall experience of the police so far whilst doing this? As because there's a lot of criticism coming for the police because of, obviously, with like the Henry Novak incident, other things, well, numerous things that have been going on. What has been your? I mean, I don't know how many. Well, how much dealings with the police you would have had prior to this, but certainly had it since you've been doing this. So, what's now been like your impression since you've started?
It's a tricky question, you know, because you are right. I have met some very good police officers, and I always say give credit where credit's due, you know, and I always say sort of reward good behaviour and punish bad behaviour. Unfortunately, my interactions with the police are the majority of them are negative, and meeting nice police officers and having positive interaction with the police is definitely a very rare occurrence. I think the police at this moment in time, in terms of auditing, have sort of understood what it is that we do, and I think they try their best to avoid sort of interacting with us, rather than maybe listen to some of the feedback that comes through and try and sort of make some changes. I don't think they are very good at holding themselves accountable. And I think they're not, like the police today isn't really fit for purpose for sort of modern sort of democracy like we have here. So it's a shame. I wish I could turn around and say, yeah, whenever I've pointed out bad police officers, that the police are really good at sort of dealing with that sort of police officer, whether it's training, disciplinaries, or whatever. But every single time when I have made complaints about police officers, in some cases doing some quite abhorrent things, that they will deflect and gaslight rather than take
close up shop then instead of dealing with it.
So and it's a shame, because it continues to erode the trust that the public have in the police, or the lack of trust that the public have in the police, and it doesn't really bode well when you still have situations like that lad, was it Henry Novak?
Henry Novak, yeah,
who died on the floor in handcuffs because of the police not believing him when he said he'd been stabbed. And the attitude, I've sort of watched that video, the attitude that he sort of displayed to that boy is an attitude that I see consistently with police officers. You know,
they pick a side before they've even turned up.
Essentially, yeah. And it really is unfortunate that we are supposed to be policed by consent. And I think if you ask the majority of British people whether they consent to police acting in that way, I think it'd be overwhelming. They would say not a fat chance. But yeah, like you look at the Commissioner for the Met, for example, I think he's really good at getting on camera and saying all the right things. But there's still this culture within the police that I feel it's a sort of, if you're not one of them, then you're outside that club and you're sort of fair game. But if you are one of them, then they'll sort of do whatever they can to protect each other.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I kind of asked about that as well, because one of my previous guests was Jay Darkmore, who was previous police officer, and he now does books and talks about his experiences inside the police. But his opinion, unsurprisingly, towards people like yourselves are you're a nuisance. And so he was one of the videos I watched recently of his was he was looking at an auditor's video where the auditor had gone up to an incident and the police were basically saying to him, can you like step away because we're dealing with this, and the auditor's saying, well, no, it's a public place, I'm allowed to do it. And Jay Darkmore, the previous police officer, basically said, look at this weapon who's trying to basically look at this melt who's trying to deal with the police and all that. Thoughts on something like that? When there's an incident going on.
Yeah, like he's clearly wrong. The first thing I would say to people that have this opinion, police officers that have this opinion, if you didn't go into your interaction with this preconception and you just treated the auditor that you're interacting with like a normal human being and done your job professionally and were polite and civil, then there's not much for the person behind the camera to really complain about, and they could certainly use that as an excellent way to try and improve the trust that the public have. But in terms of sort of filming sort of sensitive events and stuff like that, like I'm pretty sure if that person had a BBC lanyard on or an ITV lanyard or Sky News or whatever, then the police would have treated them differently.
Oh, so you think there's a different sort of
100%. Like I think, like if you look at like the polling stations that I filmed, for example, and it was something that I pointed out when I filmed at the polling stations consistently was that if I was there as part from the BBC and I was reporting on an election, I wouldn't have got anywhere near half the grief that I got when I went out to film those polling stations. It was just because that I'm an individual, I'm independent, and I'm doing my own thing, that that people sort of don't really accept it. And I think when you talk about two-tier policing and all that, you could say that that's part of it, you know. But ultimately, the media landscape has changed, as I said earlier, significantly in the last 20 years. MSM is nowhere near as influential as it used to be. Newspapers are a dying breed. And you do have this sort of new phenomenon of citizen journalism that seems to be gaining more and more traction.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think auditors have become as popular as they have, especially with the numbers that you're getting on YouTube and all that? What is the need there for people?
I think there's a number of factors. Firstly, there's entertainment purposes, you know, like there's nothing better, like I can say this openly, there's nothing better than watching someone else having drama and you're not involved and you can just sit back and watch it.
Moment.
Like, yeah, like it's like people love that stuff. I call it like people at window twitchers when you hear your neighbour across the road having a domestic and you're there twitching out the window. It is a form of entertainment. But ultimately, I think like the police, mainstream media is went through some challenging times, and I think the public's confidence in it has continuously sort of declined over the years, and people are not trusting what our politicians are telling us and what our newspapers and news institutions are telling us. So they're looking for alternative viewpoints that might resonate with what they believe is happening in the world and in our country. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are sort of gaining more and more traction. There is this sort of new phenomenon, they call it the sort of fifth estate. And I would argue that the fifth estate is ultimately going to replace the traditional fourth estate mainstream media. And auditing is a part of that, whether you like it or not. I believe that auditing is a part of that and has a role to play in how things are reported to the public. And yeah, so I think, as I say, there's entertainment and the lack of trust that people have in our sort of civil institutions these days, including sort of mainstream media, and it sort of drives people to that. You know, I think certainly COVID really sort of lit a fire under it as well, because people had a big issue with essentially being locked down, told to wear masks, told like there was so much. It was
I think when everybody then became wise as to what was going on and the things didn't quite connect together, I think then the thing is, I think that is, like you said, that's when a lot of trust in government went. Now, I think people have always been funny about government anyways, but I think that was probably the one moment where people just went, no, I'm not having this, not anymore. And when you have your incidences like Henry Novak and all that, which, by the way, we only know about because of the police's cameras on there. So one thing that I have noticed, and you touched upon it earlier, is that they're now, I think they're still trying to align the fact of auditors with right wing. And what I'm seeing is, well, actually, the camera doesn't lie. And you always say in your videos, look, I've got the only witness who won't lie. Because it picks up everything. I can't see how having literal real-time recordings of something can have an agenda. You know what I mean? You are literally recording what's there. And I've learned so much from what's been going on because, like you've said, I've not learned it from the media because they tell you whatever they want.
Yeah, and it's people were all fine when it was George Floyd in America, you know, and it sort of spawned Black Lives Matter and all this sort of stuff. And people were saying, oh, yeah, it's fine then. But when I'm out doing it, somehow I get called a fascist, I've been called a Nazi and all this sort of stuff. And just for going about and filming in everyday life, like the exact same thing that happened with George Floyd. There was some bypasser there that decided to get their phone out and film it, and sort of that documented what happened to that man. But again, yeah, it's there is it just seems like there's double standards with stuff in this country these days. There's no sort of consistency, and you get a lot of hypocrisy as well. You know, it's something that I see time and time again. I get people come up saying, "I don't film me," and then the first thing they'll do is pull out their camera and film me. You know, and it's like, well, like,
as you're surrounded by CCTV as well. And,
correct. Yeah, and people will say, "Well, like that doesn't get shared to social media," and the thing that I always say to people at the time as well is, well, I've not decided at this moment whether or not I'm going to share it in social media, and it's true. You know, like I can sort of gauge as a sort of audit goes on longer whether or not I will share it. But I've been to countless locations where I've been filming and I've been left well alone, had zero interactions, and I come home and at the end of the day I've got this footage, but there's nothing in it. There's no communication between me and another person. It's literally just me walking about talking to a camera, and so I end up not posting it. So, and it takes it back to the thing we were saying earlier on with that if people just left me alone, one, they would be on there. Two, I wouldn't have anything to upload, and potentially three, auditing itself might become redundant. So yeah, it's just one of them, you know. Like I don't think audit is going anywhere anytime soon. I think it's going to change in terms of the way it looks, compared to sort of what it was like sort of 2-3 years ago. But yeah, I don't think auditing itself is going anywhere anytime soon.
Do you know what I think they'll do? I think they'll bring in some kind of legislation that tries to stifle it somewhat. What do you think?
I don't not for auditing itself. I just don't see how they could do that without fundamentally stamping all over our sort of basic human rights. I just don't see how they could do that. Now, there is an element of public photography that might potentially lead to some new legislation coming in, and I think that's people that are going about filming drunk, vulnerable women in town centres and city centres on a night. I've seen a lot of stuff in the press about it. I think that might be legislated against, but I just don't see how they could legislate against people going about and filming in public, because, as I say, it would have to be a law that's applied to everyone, and I don't see how they could enforce it when you look at things like dash cams, CCTV for shop security. But even just like the mainstream media, they wouldn't have it either, because one of their big things, certainly for a lot of the news channels and stuff like that, is having the ability to go out and film at places all across the country, interview people all across the country, and do that.
I just don't, because they're so. I mean, as we all know, they're all so bloody two-tier anyway. That I just, for whatever reason, I can just see them going, no, you're not allowed to do that. But you'd be like, well, it's fine for them to do it then. You know, no, but they're not breaking the rule or anything like that. It's just because you fit the profile. You see what I mean?
Potentially, you know, like, but I just think it's so far-fetched. Because ultimately, if you look at what auditing is, it's, as I say, it's people that are going about collecting information and disseminating it throughout not only the country but the world. That's fundamental to our sort of human rights, freedom of speech, and for them to try and legislate against that, it then means that you're potentially undermining a functioning democracy, you know, like, because one of the main things about living in a sort of functioning democracy is that you're allowed to scrutinize your government, you're allowed to scrutinize your government agencies and stuff like that.
They don't like it at the minute, do they?
They don't, you know, like if you look at like the previous SNP chief executive, like he's obviously not enjoying the scrutiny that he was put under, because he's recently been sentenced to over 5 years in prison for fraud, you know. But ultimately, it's so important to a functioning democracy that you have the ability to scrutinise your public officials, you know, and do that unhindered. And if they started legislating against that, then you're like, well, what are we living in then? A tin pot dictatorship? You know, you're telling me that I can't like have freedom of the press anymore, or freedom of speech anymore. That's absolutely wild, you know. So, like, if you know about, do you know about the French philosopher, the late French philosopher Michel Foucault?
I know, I'm aware of the name. I'm not
So he
sure of
had
what he
this,
said.
he had this concept. He liked looking at things to do with like the balance of power between a citizenry and sort of government officials and government bodies. And he had this sort of case study where there was, if you could imagine, a round prison, and right in the middle of it, there's a sort of guard station, and all the prisoners can see the guard, but they can't see each other. And I like to think that, so what Foucault was trying to say was that you can essentially, it was all about sort of how you control your citizenship, with this sort of idea that you've got the one guard that can watch everybody at the same time, but the people can't talk to each other, can't see each other, and that's how he's able to sort of keep them under control. You know, like that guard's able to keep all these people under control. And I sort of thought about that when I was sort of auditing, when I first started auditing, and I'm saying, well, if you can imagine then that one prisoner is able to speak to all the prisoners and give them a point of view of how everything is running, then they can start being organized. They can start challenging the government. They can start challenging the people in power. And I like to think that not only the press sort of play that role, but auditors are essentially playing that role. And I think it's a way that we, as just humble citizens, can keep our government officials, the police, civil servants, all of them in check, because we're able to highlight how they behave and share that with the whole world, where otherwise it wouldn't otherwise be available to people. So
well, yeah, I think, you know, it's keeping people informed of what's going on. And I know they didn't like it, but they obviously, we had the videos going around of what happened in Belfast as well, with the guy who was attacked there. And the only reason that people knew the ins and outs of that was because this video went around. And then you sort of think, okay, well, what story would have been peddled had people not seen the video? Because I think they initially came out with just man has been stabbed. And then it had, because all the videos were coming out and being shared around, it then went into more detail. And I think it's just educating people into seeing, well, what is actually happening? Because like you said, I think people have just lost trust in the media.
Yeah, and yeah, 100%. And I think it's so fundamental to how we should operate as what's supposed to be one of the most advanced democracies in the world. You know, that we have the freedom of speech, we have the freedom to share information, we also have the freedom to scrutinize our governments and our police and people like that, and put under the spotlight the individuals that consistently get it wrong. And if we were prevented from doing that, then what's to stop them sort of running amok? You know, like what's to stop them then sort of stamping on your other rights and all of this sort of stuff? And they start abusing people like they used to do back in the day. So again, I still think it's very sort of important that they are put under scrutiny. And people might turn around and say, well, it's not an auditor's job to do that. Like, why? Like, I would ask them, why not? Like, you know, like, exactly. Like, I've given the police countless opportunities. I'll use the police as an example. I've given the police countless opportunities to hold themselves accountable whenever they've done something wrong. I've come across some police officers that have done some crazy stuff, all on camera. And every time I give the police as an institution the opportunity to rectify that and address it, they've failed every single time. You know, and a lot of my viewers, a lot of my subscribers, they expect me to complain whenever they see a police officer. Like the police officer I came into contact with at Hendon, and I found myself becoming cynical because I've not progressed that to the police on my solicitor yet. It only happened a few weeks ago. But I sort of think, well, what's the point of me putting in a complaint? Because I know exactly what's going to happen ultimately. I know exactly how they're going to play it, because it's the exact same way they've played it every single time. They are incapable of holding themselves accountable. And
wasn't this the one that they suspected you had something in your pocket?
correct,
They
yeah.
thought was it they thought it was a spray or something like
They
that?
thought it was a pepper spray, yeah.
Yeah. And he weren't listening to you at all whatsoever.
No, and it was wild, because he pulled it out pretty much. He pulled out the item from my pocket pretty much straight away. He's seen what it was, so he knew at that moment that it wasn't what he thought it was, and that's what he says was the grounds for his search. Was he seen this thing and he thought it was a pepper spray? The minute he looks at it and realizes it's not, then his grounds are finished at that point. You know, he has no further grounds to detain me, to continue searching me, because he's not seen anything else. It's not like he says, "Oh, I've seen something that looks like a pepper spray in your pocket, but I've also seen something protruding from your bag that I think might be a knife," or anything like that. It wasn't like he said something like that. It was simply the thing that he'd seen. He thought it was a pepper spray, took it out, looks at it. It's not a pepper spray, so your grounds are finished. But he continued to detain me, continued to search me, and then twisted me up briefly as well.
Yes.
So yeah, so situations like that, I know exactly if I put a complaint in, I could probably, I wouldn't say I could do it word for word, but I could pretty much tell you the rationale they would come to in terms of why they've not upheld my complaint. So as I say, I become really sort of cynical in those situations. I'll ask the viewers, and it's usually sort of 50-50 in terms of go straight to a civil claim or do the complaint first. But I just see it as a sort of waste of my time now. And I think the only way that we have recourse when situations like this develop is through the civil courts. There's no other way, because they're just
because I'll tell you for what, I mean, at the time of recording, it doesn't look like anything's happened to the police officers in the Henry Novak incident. There's another one where they forced this teenager and he ended up with his head against a spike and it went through, and that's kind of been pushed aside. So it's kind of like, are you just blowing in the wind, basically, if you're going to try and do it?
Yeah, and so yeah, I think when you have high-profile cases like the Henry Novak, then you're in a much better position for the police to maybe do something about it themselves, just given the amount of publicity it got. But it shouldn't be that way, and that's where two-tier policing comes into it again, because it has to be consistent. Regardless of the severity of the incident, they should be treating every person in every situation the same, investigating it thoroughly, and holding people accountable. And it just doesn't happen, you know, and it becomes incredibly frustrating when you have, say, for example, Gateshead Police Station, where you have a WPC, a female police officer, behave the way that she behaved, and then find out that, yeah, we're just going to give her some training. And it's like, if I'd done that to someone on the street, I'd treated someone like that, if I assaulted someone like that, then 110% I would be prosecuted for that. You know, like.
Do you think they're a lost cause now, the police? Do you think it just needs ripping up and starting again, or do you think it's salvageable?
I don't know. I think it has to go through a significant amount of change that isn't on the horizon anytime soon. I think potentially it could be salvaged, you know, but for that to happen, a lot of people within the government and within the police, places like that, are really going to have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and implement significant changes, the like the public have never seen before. So I'm not entirely too sure. You know, I think if you ask me what I think they should do, I would probably say, yeah, you're better off probably starting again, because it gives you a sort of the opportunity to build a sort of solid foundation and make sure that you've ripped out root and stem all the problem people and all the sort of police officers that really shouldn't be there in the first place. So that's what I think would be the best thing to happen. But again, I don't see either of them happening. You know,
No, I think you're not the first person to suggest that. I think other people have sort of said, look, they just need to stop, because I'm being funny. We do need the police. I mean, and I'm going to be the first to sort of say, look, if something happens, I want to go to the police to deal with it. And this is where people will push back against you and auditors as well. They'll say, well, you're only recording when they're doing things wrong. You're not recording when they're saving somebody or they're doing this, that, and the other. So actually, all you're doing is perpetuating this idea that they're all bad. I mean, what do you say to that? Because I have to sort of try and play devil's advocate, because I know what some people will say. But what do you say to that?
I would say that if you look at my sort of back catalogue on YouTube, there is countless times where I have highlighted good police officers. You know, again, I'll take you back to one of the polling stations that I've done in Kensington, where the first 2 officers that came, one of them was very aggressive.
Oh, he was, because I listened to that today and was like,
Tintin. Yeah, so he was very aggressive. His demeanour was just all off, and at that point, I think it's
his first words to you were, "What's the plan then?"
Something like that. Yeah, you know, like, and he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, bless him. But yeah, he was the way he was behaving was completely wrong. Like, he shouldn't have been behaving like that, and the way he was talking to me was very sort of aggressive and whatnot. But I sort of shrugged it off. But then his colleagues turned up. He called for backup, and I bet he was sat there thinking at the time, yes, like, a few of the boys are coming. We're going to get this guy dealt with. And it was a complete 180 on with the people that turned up later. I spoke to a very sort of nice constable, who was very nice, and I don't mind highlighting that. You know, like, I think it's important that we highlight that. I'm not going out my way to, as I say, try and make all police officers look bad. You know, but I think it's important that if we do have bad police officers, that the public get to see it. But I'll also highlight good policing. You know, like, I went to a little place, I can't remember where it was, and the guy that came out took me on a tour of his whole little village, you know, like, and it was just like one of these sort of old school local bobbies that use patch really well, knew how to engage with members of the public, and he was a breath of fresh air. So, as I say, like, I'm not going out my way to try and make police look bad. They do that themselves when they've got a bad attitude. And if I do come across police officers with a bad attitude, then 100% I am going to try my very best to make sure as many people know about them as possible, because they shouldn't be there. You know, like, I understand people make mistakes sometimes, you know, like, I make mistakes all the time, certainly on the channel. But it's about sort of taking ownership of that, putting your hands up and say, right, okay, I've made a mistake. Maybe I should try and adjust the way that I approach people. But yeah, I don't.
What was something that you think you didn't do quite correct, and then you've sort of changed? What was something that you've done?
Oh geez, where do I start? I think, like, the big one, I filmed the barracks, and I went to Windsor with Yardley Ski, another auditor, and we went to do a few places in around Windsor, and we ended up doing a sort of barracks there, and we're engaging with quite a lot of sort of the squaddies that were coming out. It wasn't a very good sort of video, and it was very confrontational, and I posted that, and straight away, a lot of, like, within minutes of that posting, I was inundated with messages from subscribers and a lot highlighting their disapproval, you know, and they were saying, like, the way that we sort of went about it was wrong. We shouldn't have done that, and whatever else. And say the feedback was pretty much unanimous at that point. And at that point, I've had to obviously put my hands up and say, okay, maybe I got this one wrong. You know, like,
I was going to say, because how did that sort of make you feel that when you started getting that feedback?
How did it make me feel? I was embarrassed, if anything, and I was like, the thing I says to the public or the subscribers and all that at the time was that I think there is a way, I think there is a place in time where people in armed forces should expect to be put under scrutiny, like the police and all of these people. But I accept that maybe the way that we done it this time was not the right way to go about it. So I was embarrassed, and I was a little bit taken by surprise. But again, like, I have no problem putting my hands up and saying, "Oh, I've got this one wrong." So yeah, so like there's just stuff like that, and it's about sort of listening to listen to your audience, listening to your subscribers. Like, my channel would be nothing without those people that choose to watch my videos and all that sort of stuff. I'm in a very sort of privileged position, and I certainly don't take it for granted. So when they give me feedback that was as unanimous as what it was in that incident, then
you got to listen, then, haven't you?
I've got to listen. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You'd be a fool not to. So, and then you, as I say, you take ownership of that, and you try and learn from it. Every day's a school day ultimately. So, I think if you end up with a big ego and you can't sort of take a step back and sort of scrutinize yourself for a moment, then you're probably in a bit of a problem, So,
do you get much backlash with your comments and that from people?
Do I get backlash from people? In what context?
Like in YouTube, like having a go at you or anything like that. Do you get much sort of negative comments?
All the time. Yeah.
Stupid question, really.
It's the internet, like the internet is a dark place, man. And I consistently get trolled. I consistently get haters emailing me and all this sort of stuff. And if you're not able to deal with that, you have no place being on the internet. There's no place for you in the internet, because that's just the way it is. It's water off a duck's back, if it is just trolling and hating, like,
it is mad though, like how people do react to things like that. Because I mean, I've had the usual, like, I hope you get cancer and die and things like that. And you think, whoa, hang on a fucking minute, it is weird. You're kind of opening yourself up to the world, which is good in one way, but you're getting all the pond life as well, aren't you?
Correct, yeah. And like, certainly it's calmed down a bit now, but if you had to rewind maybe 2 years ago, I was being sort of trolled and doxed relentlessly, and it got to the point where there was death threats had come through. Like, my partner was getting threats of sexual violence against her, and stuff like that. And like, if stuff is aimed at me, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm a big boy. I'm from Glasgow. Like, I've heard it all before. Do you know what I mean? It's literally water off a duck's back. But where I sort of draw the line is where there are people that are clearly not involved in my online activities, and they are being targeted simply because of me, and they're being targeted with some very sort of vicious threats that we don't know whether or not they have any merit to them. So,
but you have to treat all of them seriously, because
you have to treat them all seriously. So at that point back then, that's when we had to sort of get the police involved. Like, as I say, up until it was just me, I didn't care, or I genuinely didn't care. But
did you record them whilst they were talking to you?
No, it's all online. So it's all done through it's all done through either. Some of them are morons that use their genuine sort of their actual, whether it's Facebook or the Facebook profile or Gmail account or stuff like that. Those people are idiots. The smarter ones would do it sort of anonymously. But yeah, it was just it was mainly sort of through email or posting about me online and stuff like that. So, but as I say, we had to get the police involved when it became apparent that there was other people in my personal life, not just my partner, but there was other people that were being targeted, and I've then had to have conversations with people in my circle and say, listen, like, if you are going to be on social media, it might be worth your while to making your accounts private and stuff like that, just while this is dealt with. So it's unfortunate, but as I say, it's the internet, and I can handle it directed at me, I really don't mind.
It just becomes a bit real then when it sort of deals with your family and people that you love.
Exactly. And like, I've heard a lot of things saying, well, like, that's, yeah, you deserve that because you go about harassing people. And I say, well, these people, if you're making that comment, you're just brain dead, because I don't go about making threats to kill someone. I don't go about making threats against people's children. I don't go about making threats to rape someone's partner and stuff like that. You know, like I simply go and film at a place, and if someone has a negative reaction to that, I film that. Like, I'm not forcing them to react that way.
No.
But that's how they've chosen to react. But yeah, people try and mitigate it against how I go about conducting my
But then
business.
that's all we're sort of getting at the moment, because do you know who young Bob is?
I do know who Young
Yeah,
Bob
so
is.
obviously he's recently been attacked whilst he does these kind of
Yeah.
almost like Charlie Kirk style things. But
Yeah.
then the immediate reaction to it is, well, if you're going to come and talk about things, well, then you deserve it. And it's like, well, this apples and oranges. There's two different
Exactly.
things, you know.
Exactly. Like, as I say, at no point will I go out my way to threaten someone with violence. You know, like, I always say on a channel that any form of violence should be as a last resort. You know, like, I've been attacked countless times. I've had stuff thrown at me, thrown over me. But
So
simply for
you've
filming.
actually been attacked while you've been doing this.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, like I've had quite a few incidents. Like Southwark Council, the guy, uh, he snatched my phone and ran away. But I've had the guy at Channel 4 that poured a bottle of water over my head. I've been pushed, grabbed. People try to punch me. Like, I was filming a place up near Victoria in central London, where the guy sort of came up, they walked past me, they doubled back, came up behind me, and basically had a pop at me, tried to grab and hold off me, try to grab my stuff, try to grab my property, and all that sort of stuff. It was a bit wild. But yeah, there's been quite a few incidents where things like that have happened, and people are the sort of armchair auditors. Like, will sit there and say, "Oh, you should have done this. You should have done that. You should have just defended it. You should have punched them." And I'm not. I don't. I take no pleasure from violence, like, at all. And I will. I think violence should, as I said, should always be used as a last resort. Like, I think if your first thought is to punch someone in the face, then, like, there's something not quite right. And I mean, I'm there to do a job ultimately, and my priority is sort of to do that job unhindered, but then also to protect the footage that I've got so that I can sort of share that with the viewing public, no matter what it is that's happened. But yeah,
I'll be
like, I
honest
think,
with you. I'll be honest with you. If it had been 20 years ago, I would have probably thought about doing what you do. But there are so many nutters now
yeah,
out and about. And I'm going to be honest, I do worry about people like yourself, or for people like yourself, because I also watch people like AY audits, I watch people like knockout audits and that.
yeah.
And all I think to myself is, someone's going to die eventually. Are you ever worried about your life?
No, like, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I feel that would necessitate me to feel that my life is in danger. But I accept that potentially, but as I say, you don't know who you're coming across in the streets. You don't know how much they've got it together mentally, like what's going on in their lives and stuff like that. So I do
The amount
accept
of
that.
people who seem fucking tooled up now, you know what I mean? It's, you know,
Exactly.
mad.
So yeah, that I do think obviously that you could end up in a situation where something really bad happens. I like to think that I'm savvy enough to sort of know when that's going to happen, potentially prevent it. But I've never been in a situation where I've generally felt, oh, like, I could be in a spot of bother here. So, like, who knows, you know? You never know who you're filming in the streets. You don't know what's going on in their lives ultimately. But is that enough of a deterrent to stop me doing what I'm doing? No, like, I will continue to do what I'm doing. And if it's that I got to that point, God forbid, then you would just have to sort of roll with the punches, pardon the pun, and sort of deal with it as it sort of comes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you for why, because I watch, like I said, I do watch knockout audits as well. And I do like his videos, but when someone sort of says, please don't film me, you know, I don't want you to do it, and he says, well, what are you going to do about it? I do sometimes think, oh, you know, because
I think
it only takes the wrong person, you know.
Does he not? Is he not? I heard a rumor. I'm pretty sure someone told me that he has been trained in some sort of martial arts or boxing.
He used to be. I think he was a boxer.
Yeah, he knows how to handle himself, you know. So
yeah, but the thing is, you know, there's self-defense, and then there's someone who's got a tool, you know, or something like that. There's only going to be so much you can do, and I think sometimes I just think you know, there's always going to be that person that you wouldn't want to say something like that to. I mean, have you ever watched like other auditors and thought to yourself, I wouldn't have done that, or anything like that?
Yes, like I think, I have watched other auditors and how they sort of go about doing particular videos and thought, that's not really for me. But I also caveat with that with the fact that I respect their rights to sort of do it that way. Ultimately, if that's what they want to do, that's completely up to them. It's not how I would do it. But ultimately, like, they're their own man or woman, and they're an adult, and they can make their own decisions, and that's completely up to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, though. I mean, I'm not including you in this because I'm not aware of anything going on with you, but you auditors do like to have beefs with each other. They all seem to be each other's throats all the time. But this one doesn't get on with that one, and this one's having a go at that one. It seems to be like a, you know, an auditor kind of like fight going on between all of you guys.
Yeah, like it's something that I'm aware of. I try and sort of keep myself to myself. I might stay in my lane. I mind my own business. It's like, if people have beef, it's nothing to do with. If it's got nothing to do with me, then that's the way I'll keep it. And it's why I don't do a lot of collaborations with other auditors. I've done a few, most notably with Yardley Ski, who is a good friend of mine now. And I've sort of bumped into Marty Blagborough, News Now Yorkshire, on a Palestine protest. And that's my phone. And I've also bumped into AB at a trans protest. But out with that, there was a guy called Rights Defender that was about a while ago. He had been asking me for a while, and I went out with him sort of once or twice. But yeah, it's part of the reason why I sort of do my own thing, because there is these sort of conflicts that arise, and I'm not really interested in getting drawn into that sort of stuff. But that's only part of the reason why I don't do these sort of collaborations. But yeah, like, as I say, that's those guys, and I just leave them to it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the most well, I say controversial, but the one that seems to has ding dongs with people all over the place, although I do watch his content, is Charlie Veitch.
Right. Okay.
Thoughts, Charlie Veitch?
In terms of what?
Do you think he's good what he's doing, or like the coverage he does? Because I mean, he used to do an awful lot in Manchester. I think he got banned from being in Manchester. I think, or he decided he didn't want to go into Manchester anymore. Do you think the way he approached it is good, or do you think, you know, he's perhaps needing to calm it down a little bit? Because I mean, I think there was a lot of concerns about him getting hurt quite severely at various points.
Yeah, like Charlie Veitch, like, in terms of how he goes about doing his content and all that, you just need to look at his numbers and know that he's obviously doing something right, you know, like. And again, like, if you don't agree with his politics, stuff like that, then you don't like my content. If you don't agree with it, you don't need to watch, you know, like. So I'm not in any position to turn around and say whether one particular content creator is doing something right or wrong, you know. Like, that's his business, is what he does, and it's up to him how he sort of runs his channel and his social media profiles and stuff like that. But like in terms of the sort of broader question about him potentially being in danger or other auditors potentially being in danger, like I've seen, as you're probably aware, that sometimes auditors have to go out with sort of security guards and stuff like that.
Yeah, Fred
And
the
then,
bodyguard.
yeah, like Fred the bodyguard, most notably. It's not something that I would look to do. And I think if I was going into a situation where I was looking to try and get some sort of bodyguards to protect me in that situation, then I probably went the wrong way. It's not where I envisaged sort of going with my channel and stuff like that. So yeah, like I try and stay as neutral as possible, believe it or not, sort of with my politics and stuff like that on the channel, so that I can't get accused of being biased and whatnot. And hopefully to prevent me then having to have a bodyguard trailing my step if I ever wanted to go filming. So, you know that Charlie Veach is very, very successful at what he does. And I've got
but it's come at a price, essentially, hasn't it?
Potentially, yeah, but like it makes me I have a lot of respect for him because of that, you know, like because he puts himself in very sort of dangerous situations in the pursuit of sharing his truth, his story, his perception of what's going on in Manchester, his city where I believe he lives, and he's sort of steadfast in doing that. So I have huge amount of respect for that. But yeah, I sort of flirted a little bit with the sort of political things with the trans movement, particularly, and the Palestine marches and stuff like that. And yeah, like, it was something that I thought, all right, maybe. But again, when I sort of sit down and think about where it would lead me further down the line, I sort of decided that it really wasn't that direction I wanted to move in. So hence why you don't see a lot of the sort of Palestine protests in London. Like if you know London, there's pretty much protests in London every week anyway. So if I really wanted to, I could go film them every week, and I'd have no doubt quite a lot of content to work with. But the same with the sort of trans stuff as well. Like that sort of happened by accident, and I didn't want to be pigeonholed by just sort of filming.
Yeah, not only that, mate. These people aren't just a little bit for it; it's all in, you know, and
100%.
Quite violently so at times as well.
Yeah, I had newspapers reporting that I was affiliated with far right Nazis and stuff like that, just because I filmed some trans people having a street party or a protest or whatever you wanted to call it, and yeah, it was mental. You know, just because, as I say, I filmed a trans protest, and again, like I felt I was very sort of respectful to begin with. I felt that I wouldn't say it was sympathetic to their point of view. I had no idea about sort of the trans movement and all that sort of stuff at the time. And it was a shock the day after that video went out, and I woke up and like my phone was just blowing up. But yeah, like it's one of them. Like it was something that I sort of followed through with at Hyde Park, where they have sort of meetings there. But again, it was something that I decided that I don't really want to take my channel down that sort of rabbit hole and then get sort of pigeonholed for just being known for filming trans protests and all that.
Yeah,
so,
I can understand that. I mean, the thing is, you know, you've like you said, you've got your family as well. What does your other half sort of make of you doing all this, by the way?
Bemusement, I would say, is the word I would use. She's a bit bemused by it all, you know, like she used to get really worried whenever I went out, because obviously there's been a few quite serious incidents that have happened on the channel where I've either been arrested or I've been caught up in some form of conflict. But as sort of things have sort of went on, she sort of calmed down a bit, and she just knows that, like, no matter what happens, I'll just deal with it as and when it happens, you know. There's no point in her sitting at home worrying like, oh, is he going to get arrested? Because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Like it's one of them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we just
it's
keep
nice
in
to have
touch.
that support at home as well,
Yeah.
you know, for what you're doing as well, because you're ultimately doing it for your family as well, especially with obviously the payments that you're going to be getting as well for advertising and something like that. It's for your family, you know, you're working for them. Only because you mentioned it in one of your videos.
Yeah.
You obviously, I'm not going to pinpoint because of your identity, all that. You put
Okay.
yourself between 30 and 40, and you said in one of your videos.
Yeah.
So as you're getting older, because basically what I do with my channel as well is that we kind of look at society. I mean, I'm coming from someone who's 42, so getting older. What are you learning now that maybe you wish you could have told yourself earlier, do you think?
When you say earlier, do you mean earlier?
Just in like with society, or like when you was young, you know, with things that you know now and you're figuring out now that you wish you was able to say to yourself when you was younger, because obviously years create wisdom, and you're
Yeah.
seeing things for how they are. You're going out on the streets, you're recording. It's kind of, you're looking behind the curtain of how things are. What do you know now that you didn't know when you was younger?
I would probably say that being left doesn't mean you're liberal. Like, I think my perception of what was left wing politically and what was right wing politically is completely shifted in the last sort of few years. And I always, when I was younger, I always thought I was sort of left wing, like liberal. And it took me sort of getting into auditing to realise that actually the people on the left aren't as liberal as we would think. If anything, they're more authoritarian than the right. They want to stymie freedom of speech. They want to stamp on other people's rights so that other people can get on in society. And yeah, I think that was a big wake up call, and that all stemmed again from the trans protest. Was that I went through an absolute paradigm shift in terms
Because
of what
everything
I
you said
thought.
there gets attributed to the right.
Exactly, yeah. And then again, that was something that I had a big wake up call, and I went, right, I've been wrong about politics for quite some time. I've essentially been living with my head in the sand, and I've
Do you think
missed the
school's
shift.
got a part to play in that?
Do I think schools have got a part to play in it?
Mm.
Yeah, I think universities have a massive part to play in it. You know,
yeah, because you did
because
journalism, you know.
I did, yeah. So like they obviously being at university and doing a media course, there was some Marxist elements
You
to
must
the
have been
teachings.
surrounded,
I
absolutely
was,
surrounded with them.
I was surrounded, you know, and yeah, even people like there's academics that I source and I quite like that are Marxists, you know, like if you look at you know who Jürgen Habermas is.
Yeah.
Habermas, he developed the theory of the public sphere, which I absolutely loved sort of reading about and sort of putting it into a sort of contemporary context. But yeah, he was part of a sort of Marxist sort of community, and a lot of the stuff that they do pump out is sort of very sort of left wing. But I think like there's just so much demonizing of people on the right, like that universities have got a big part to play in sort of dealing with that. Because now what happens is that you've got people on the left or the centre of left even, that as soon as you have an opinion that's even remotely sort of right wing politically, you get branded, as I said before, a Nazi, a fascist, a far right thug, and all this sort of stuff. And it's they're basically using these terms to basically shut down opposing arguments, especially if those opposing arguments have credibility and are very convincing, contradicting sort of left wing viewpoints. It's something that's happening more and more and more. It happens in the House of Commons. I see it all the time with people just getting branded far right instead of actually sitting down. And I think it's what's causing this pressure cooker that seems to be happening in the UK right now, where there are people that generally don't really get involved with politics, or generally used to consider themselves being relatively left, and they're not enjoying and they're not liking what's happening with the country, and they're developing sort of politically right opinions. But as soon as they sort of express those opinions, they get shut down as being a fascist or a far right thug, and it stops them being listened to. And as I say, I think that's what's leading to this sort of pressure cooker. And I think that's why when things like Henry Novak happens, you have people rioting, you have at Southport, you have people rioting. And it's simply because these people have been talking about this, and every time they do talk about it, they just get shut down as being a fascist. And yeah, so like there's been I think there's a massive breakdown in how people are supposed to engage with each other to form genuine public opinion. You know, and for people that are watching or listening, like if you don't know about the Habermas model of sort of the public sphere, he basically outlined how people would form public opinion, and he used an example of like coffee houses in Europe in the 1800s, where people would come and debate, and that was the whole thing. They would use forms of media like newspapers, but in today's context, you could use things like YouTube channels, you could use things like mainstream media, newspapers, all these things, and they would debate it and they would have conversations, and ultimately the goal was that they would come to a consensus, they would come to an agreement, and that would be called sort of public opinion. There's been a breakdown in that now in the UK, I think, and you have whole swathes of the country that are just not being listened to, and eventually something's got to give. And unfortunately, it seems to be that when something high profile goes wrong, that people are going, this is what we've been talking about.
Well, I think Southport was the biggest one I saw, the first anyway. And that was attributed to the government because it was the not that they were lying to everyone, it was the kind of the very well doctored message that came out about what happened. And who was instead of just being open and honest, which then goes back to your auditing, you know, where literally the camera can't lie. You know, people just want to be told the truth.
Yeah, and like if you listen to like the late Charlie Kirk, he always used to say that when people stop talking, bad things happen.
Yes,
when people stop having debates and really sort of thrashing out their points of views, when that stops, bad things happen, and that is what.
And then look what happened to him.
Yeah, and look what happened to him because somebody didn't like what he was saying, and instead of trying to debate him and maybe try and make him see the error of his ways and what he was saying, they just
or let's heaven forbid that you can think this, I can think that, and that's both okay. You know,
exactly. Like there's I said in the channel before. It's disagree agreeably, you know, and that's not that's from the Rest is Politics podcast, where you that's what they say. Rory Stewart and what's his name, the Labour guy, Alistair Johnson, and they say like, oh, we should disagree, disagree agreeably. In other words, let's agree to disagree. And you can't do that now. People are so adamant that they're right, and they're not going to listen to any other point of view, to the point where they're not even going to let you have your point of view. They would rather make violence on you than allow you
to justify that as well.
Exactly, yeah. And it's wild. Like it's absolutely wild to think about that people are getting killed, people are getting seriously assaulted simply for speaking words. You know, like I find it absolutely staggering that that it's sort of got to this point. You know, like,
well, and where do we go from here, then, mate?
Yeah, exactly.
Where do we go?
Exactly, and it's something that I'll say to people when I'm out and about that if they end up going mental at me, I'll say to them like, let's have why don't you just come and have a conversation with me? I'm not unreasonable. I mean, I'm only unreasonable when people become unreasonable. And I would much rather have a healthy debate and thrash out our points with one another than someone just saying, I don't like what you're saying, so I am going to assault you for that, or I'm going to try and do something to you for that. It's wild. Like, I don't know what's happened with society that we've got to this point, you know. But yeah, I think like, I don't know
Something's
what.
going to happen, isn't it? You know, something's
Yeah,
going to
like
happen.
I don't know what's going to. Like, it's one of them, you know what I mean? Like, I think we've got to a point in society now where young people are being brought up in a way that they are sort of mollycoddled to the point
Mm-hmm.
where people can't even say anything negative towards them, you know, and they just can't handle it. So you've got these young people that have like delusions reinforced, you know, like if you look at sort of my opinion on sort of trans people now is that this person's obviously got some sort of delusion going on that they think that they can identify as a woman when in fact they've got a penis and they're a man, and people are reinforcing that. And
Or
when you're living
identify
in,
that they're a cat or anything
yeah,
like that.
exactly, like, and so when these people get brought up in a world where all they know is just people reinforcing anything that they're saying, anything that they think, and that nobody should say anything different to them. Then when it comes to the point where they're a fully fledged adult on their own 2 feet in the real world, like they just can't handle when someone turns around and says, "No, I don't agree with you." Like, and I think some of these people just can't handle that to the point where
Mm.
they just resort to violence. You know, like so. I think that something has to give. You know, and I dread to think what it will take for this situation to try and sort of resolve itself. Is it going to be like I don't want to use the word civil war, but it's us and
That's what
them,
people
and
keep saying, isn't it?
do you know what I mean? Like, but and
Mm.
like you can sort of see the way that if it doesn't get dealt with, where else does it end up ultimately if you continue sort of down this path? Um, but yeah, I think as to take it back to what I was saying earlier, the universities have got a big part to play, because there's quite a lot of these sort of far left or even left wing liberals that are going to school there, and they're just being sort of overwhelmed with, yeah, it's okay to do whatever you want to do. You could like, and you could force other people to think what you believe to be true, even although it's not. So I think that's sort of where it has to start. But I
Well,
think we're
it all makes sense because when I was at school, it was then at that point, especially when Tony Blair came in, everyone was getting pushed to go to uni. And if you
yeah,
weren't, you was almost made like a pariah that you didn't
mm,
want to go to university. Like, how dare you? You know,
yeah,
not everyone deserves to go to uni, you know,
yeah,
but then the idea was you then go to uni and then you've got the majority of people in each year are then getting indoctrinated. They're having the propaganda and then they come out and then they act out what they've been
yeah.
learning. And you can just see these pieces fitting together like, no, this makes sense now. Why they weren't really concerned about people going to uni to learn and all that, but it starts to make sense.
Yeah, 100%. And but if you look at the universities themselves, like the majority of, like if you want to talk about education, the degrees that they're offering people, like you're talking to someone, I've done a journalism degree, for goodness sake. Like I found out maybe after year one of my degree that it was going to be absolutely redundant. But that's the case for the majority of their
Mm-hmm.
syllabus and the courses that they're offering, is that they're offering these degrees out to people that are absolutely useless in the real world. They're
Mm-hmm.
not improving anybody's prospects of being employable or anything like that, and they're all centered around Marxist ideals and Marxist and sort of teachings and stuff like that. So certainly with the social sciences and the arts and stuff like that. So um, yeah, there's no surprise that they are sort of just pumping out these students that are very sort of left leaning,
Mm.
and they are at the point where they they can't handle someone having a different opinion from them, you know, like so it's one of them, you know, like
Well, I
I
think
think
employers are finding that out now as well, aren't they? Where like they can't get them to do anything. They can't tell them to tell, you know, that you shouldn't be doing this because then it's like, victim mode, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's it. You get gaslit to,
Yeah.
excuse me, within an inch of your life, you know. That, and I think we just need to go back to a common sense approach, you know, in terms of like we just need to. If you're like the thing is, well, certainly for the trans stuff, like before you had like drag queens and cross dressers and stuff like that, and there wasn't really. I don't remember there being an issue with that sort of scene and people doing that. They're left to do what they wanted, but now it's to the point where they are sort of enforcing on other people how they should use language and how they should communicate and how they should even think. And it's yeah, it's a crazy world we live in. It's a crazy world we live in.
But what it does do, it does give you content for your
it does,
for your
yeah.
channel. As much as I don't like the term content, because it's your recording, it's your video, it's your story you're telling, you know. Where does your channel go? What's the sort of plan? Do you have plans? Are there sort of things you're working towards?
I do, of course. Like so as I said to you before, like I think you can look at auditing now to where it was maybe 2-3 years ago and see that it seems to be going through some change. And I've felt for a while that I am going to have to sort of change how the channel looks in terms of the type of sort of videos that I'm publishing and what I'm working on and stuff like that. So I've sort of known for a while that I'm probably sort of going to drive it in a sort of certain direction. And there's a number of reasons for that. But in terms of sort of for the sort of long term, I've said it on the channel quite a few times. Once I'm at just over, what is it, 80,000 subscribers on YouTube, I've sort of says to the subs that once I get to 100,000, I'm going to come out from behind the camera, and that's when I'm going to initiate sort of how the channel's changing. I was hoping to have done it before now. It's taken a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that was a sort of target that I set myself when I had these thoughts and I was thinking about what direction I'm going to take the channel in, and yeah, so there will be quite a significant change to my channel once I get to that sort of milestone. If I get to that milestone, I like to think I'd make it there. So yeah, there is a plan. I don't want to give too much away.
No, absolutely. But it sounds like a lot of promising stuff there for you.
Yeah, so there will still be the sort of traditional audit stuff, but the channel will be taken in a different direction. I understand that a lot of my subs quite enjoy just seeing me having negative interactions with security or the police or whatever, you know, like, but I think for my own sanity as well, like I want to mix it up. Like there's so much more that I could cover on the channel, and appeal to a wider audience. So, but we'll see, you know, like I think I'm just trying to find when I first started YouTube, I had a very sort of terrible work-life balance, and now I think I've got it to.
I'm in that at the moment. I'm at the early stage at the minute, so I've got that trying to fit everything in sort of stage that you've obviously gone through.
And like if I could go back to the early stage of my channel, I would have paced myself more. You know, I felt this overwhelming urge to continually be publishing videos because it was new, it was exciting, and I was getting a lot of traction. People were subscribing, people were watching. But I wish I'd paced myself a bit more back then, and sort of really taken time to find that bit of balance. But now it's fine. Like the last sort of year and a half, I think I've found that balance quite. I think I've sort of hit the sweet spot, and I'm quite happy just publishing sort of once or twice a week. I try and publish twice a week. If I could publish 3 times a week, I would, but I publish once or twice a week. I'm quite happy with that, and it means that I've got more than enough time to spend with my partner and our children, as well as.
Well, that's what it's all for, isn't it? At the end of the day,
exactly. You know, like, so. But as I say, like, but again, people seem to have this preconception that that YouTubers, sort of auditors on YouTube, are all bums and they've got nothing else to offer except what we do in terms of our YouTube activities. When in fact, certainly for myself, it's actually the opposite. I genuinely find time hard to come by to go out and spend a whole day filming, just due to other commitments and all things that I do. So it could be a bit of a tricky one, you know, but yeah, like
I think, you know what, that's actually really good advice, and I sort of thank you for that, because there'll be people who'll be watching this who have their own channels, who are maybe starting off or in the early stage like me, and probably will take on advice from people like you and sort of go, actually, yeah, probably I should pace it out a little bit, because I'm trying to think, my God, I'm trying to get as much out as possible. Is that the right thing? I don't know.
Is your channel monetized?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. So, because what I done before, like when I first started, I just went all out, filming everywhere, getting as much as I could, and I was publishing it. And then what I realized is that the criteria to get monetized on YouTube is actually not that bad compared to other platforms, in my opinion. And I think, like, even if I'd paced myself, I still would have hit that threshold to be monetized. And what ended up happening was, because I was in a rush to keep publishing, when I had got to the point the channel got monetized, I'd published so much stuff that I didn't make a penny on. So not that I grudge it on, but I didn't make any money on it. So if I'd taken my time, I would have obviously hit that milestone, and potentially it would have been more financially viable at that point, you know. But it's like, yeah, there was I called it to Yardley Ski. I think I called it the YouTube hamster wheel. It's like you're constantly sort of chasing after your last video. You know, you feel pressured to continually sort of keep pushing stuff out. And I think,
is this your job? Is this actually your job full time? Have you managed to do this as your full career now?
Oh, it's not my, no. Like, it's, as I say, I don't get the time to do it full time. I wish I did. I do a number of other stuff. I'm a published writer. I do quite a few different things. This is just a small part of what I do. Would I want to do it full time? Probably not, to be fair. Like, I think I've got exactly, but I think I've got the right balance, you know. I'm quite happy. Like, if I could go out once a week, find time once a week to go out, make a few videos, I'm quite happy doing that.
Yeah, I hope that, you know, with all the new things that you're going to be doing with your channel, it's going to go amazingly well for you. I really do hope so, mate. I actually love your content, and I love what you're doing as well. And obviously, you know, I hope the absolute best for you and your family as well. I'll certainly be watching.
I appreciate that. You know, like, whatever happens. You know, like, I think before, as I said, I was very pressured to keep it going, and I have a lot of admiration for some of the big names in auditing, like AB, DJ Media, and Marty Blagborough. And I used to aspire to having a channel just like theirs, and as a result of aspiring for that, like, certainly in the early stages of the channel, put myself under sort of undue pressure. And I think I've learned just to sort of take a step back and say, you know, just let it, whatever happens, and enjoy it more than anything else. So we'll see, you know, like, I still find it staggering that, as I say, people tune in, thousands and thousands of people watch my videos and subscribe to the channel. And I, again, fully appreciate what a privileged position I'm in, and yeah, just how much of a privilege it is, you know, like, because I've come across countless people that have YouTube channels, and they really struggle to get them off the ground, and for me, it just sort of happened. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, you know.
Well, yeah, I will certainly be keeping an eye on it. And obviously, for anybody who's watching this, I'm going to be putting on the link as well for your YouTube channel. Where else can they find you as well?
Oh, well, YouTube's my main platform, but I'm on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, or X, as it's now known. But yeah, normally, like, if you want to watch all my work, YouTube's the place to go. You know, that's got everything on there. So
that's fantastic. Thank you ever so much, mate, for jumping on. I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you about all
I
this.
appreciate it.
No, that's okay.
I appreciate it, bro. Have a lovely evening, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, if anybody is watching this and want to also appear on here, like the Laughing Auditor has, you can find my email address in the channel description. Please do get in contact, and thank you for watching.